Welcome to the regular meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee for June 25th, 2025. I am Jason Chavez, the chair of this committee. Before we begin the meeting, I want to offer a friendly reminder to the public, all members and the staff, that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to moderate the speed and clarity of their comments. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
Councilmember Payne.
Present.
Rainville.
Present.
Ellison.
Here.
Palmisano is absent. Vice Chair Wansley is absent. Chair Chavez.
Present.
There are 4 members present.
Let the record reflect that we have a quorum. There are 3 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is accepting a grant from the state of Minnesota to provide police liaison research and monitoring for the drug court in Hennepin County. Item number 2 is amending a grant period for the Promising Practice Program for culturally specific family home visit services. Item number 3 is approving appointments to the Community Commission on Police Oversight. Colleagues, do we have any questions on any of these items? All right. I'll move approval of items 1 through 3. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Any abstentions? Those carry, and the consent agenda is approved. We're going to take up the receive and file items in a different order than what was printed on the agenda. First, we are going to take up the Workplace Advisory Committee presentation. Then we will take up the receive and file items 4 through 6 in order. Here to present the Workplace Advisory Committee item on recommendations for increasing worker training on labor standards is Taylor from CETUL and Brian Elliott from SEIU. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here. My name is Taylor Chevy, and I'm one of the lead organizers at CETUL, the Center of Workers United in Struggle, and been a lead on the co-enforcement program since its inception. I want to thank you for inviting us here today to present on the Workplace Advisory Committee's recommendation for creating a right to paid training for all Minneapolis workers. CETUL is proud to have had a representative on the WAC since its creation, and CETUL members on the Earn Sick and Save Time Committee leading to the creation of the WAC. And this is because we firmly believe that the best workplace policies are created when both workers and businesses have a seat at the table and input on decisions. Minneapolis has been a leader in many ways in Minnesota and across the country in leading the way in creating policies and programs that protect and uplift working people, especially the most marginalized workers in our city. We've seen the ways that raising the minimum wage, creating Earn Sick and Save Time policies, increasing protections against wage theft, and the co-enforcement partnership between LSED and worker setters like CETUL has improved the lives of thousands of workers across the city of Minneapolis. But even with all of that progress, many workers still continue to experience violations day in and day out at their jobs and workplaces. Some of these issues being wage theft, discrimination, and also denial of sick time and retaliation for using their sick time or standing up for their rights. These problems are particularly concentrated in low-wage industries and jobs such as service and hospitality, personal care aides and child care workers, janitors and cleaning workers, security guards, landscapers and groundskeepers, retail, nursing and residential care facilities, and educational services. Some of the most important people who keep our city running day in and day out are the most likely to experience violations of their rights at work. Some insights and stories from CETUL members that illustrate what's happening. There's many. I'll keep it brief. But we've supported workers coming forward on minimum wage violations. Sometimes that leads to a strong outcome, like finding broader violations in a company through the city investigating, leading to settlements up to $20,000 or more. And we've also come across workers who are still making under the minimum wage today but feeling too scared as the only Latino workers in their business to come forward and speak up. We've seen people take time off for sick time and be retaliated against for using it, leading to many people in industries like hospitality to not want to claim their right to stay home and take care of themselves, like we all have the right to do. I'll leave it there for right now, but there's plenty of data that tells us that these stories are not isolated incidents. For example, the Rutgers report has cited in the recommendation from the WAC found that minimum wage violations in the greater Minneapolis-St. Paul metropolitan area has cost workers an average of nearly $90 million a year over the past decade, primarily affecting Black and Latinx workers, more likely than white workers experiencing wage theft. This study notes that the large majority of minimum wage violations that are happening remain unreported and undetected. What this tells us is that the scope of this problem is bigger than our current resources, our programs, and our tools can effectively handle. So there is a need for the city to scale up the things that are most effective in identifying and remedying violations and ultimately move towards preventing them from happening at all. The good news is that Minneapolis, in partnership with community organizations, has already developed and implemented some of the tools and programs that have proven to be effective. Through the co-enforcement partnership between organizations like Setul and the city, we have seen and been a part of many stories and concrete data that shows that providing Know Your Rights trainings make a big difference in how workers are able to respond when violations occur. I've been a part of a series of trainings at a local fast food franchise as of late, and through those trainings, we were actually able to uncover more wage theft issues than just what the settlement covered. Training from a trusted organization ensures that workers feel knowledgeable, empowered, and supported in asking questions, coming forward with complaints, and navigating a complex complaint and compliant resolution process. Training also develops worker skills to train other workers. So this information goes beyond just one workplace. And using our Know Your Rights training as a tool has allowed the city and community partners to support hundreds of workers in resolving problems with paid sick time and minimum wage and retaliation and recovering thousands of dollars in stolen wages. So, as I conclude, now is the time to scale up what we know is already working. The city already implements paid training as part of settlement agreements with businesses who have violated the city's labor ordinances, as I was speaking on. By expanding on this practice and building on the success of the current co-enforcement program, we can continue to move forward from working to identify and remedy violations to preventing them from happening in the first place. For instance, there's a lot of primarily Spanish-speaking workers that we talk to, and they'll say, I didn't know about sick and safe time, and you can go to their English-speaking coworker, and they do know about it. So being able to do trainings directly with workers can help share that information and prevent people from experiencing injustices all the time. I'm going to pass it over to Brian Elliott to share some more details on the policy from the WAC.
Thank you, Taylor. Thank you, Chair Chavez, council members. My name is Brian Elliott, and I am the Executive Director of the SEIU, Minnesota State Council. SEIU represents many thousands of workers who live and or work within the city of Minneapolis, primarily lower wage jobs like janitorial, security officers, home care workers, nursing home, hospital, clinic workers, and school employees. I have served on the Workplace Advisory Committee since its inception, and prior to that on the Workplace Regulations Partnership Group, and serve in many ways as the policy wonk on the Workplace Advisory Committee, which is why I'm going to just lay out sort of what the recommendation actually is that the Workplace Advisory Committee approved earlier this month. So with regard to the expansion of the co-enforcement program that Taylor was discussing, there are really three components that are in the recommendation. First, is creating the right for workers to attend an employer-paid, 1 hour of employer-paid right-to-know training. We have already created similar obligations in the city for minimum wage, earned sick and safe time. We are not talking about 1 hour per whatever. We are talking about 1 hour full stop of employer-paid right-to-know, an employer-paid worker right to attend a right-to-know training, a 1 hour right-to-know training. The idea here is that the more workers who know about their rights under the city ordinances, the more likely they are going to be able to flag problems that may mistakenly happen by their employers, and the less likely unscrupulous employers are going to be to try to take advantage of those workers and denying them those rights. The second component is establishing the content, the curriculum of the training, and alongside that, establishing the organizations that will be, or not establishing, but certifying the organizations that will be delivering that training. And this is something, again, that the city is well familiar with already through its existing co-enforcement process. And the third and last piece of the recommendation from the Workplace Advisory Committee is that we have a mechanism by which workers are informed of this right to attend 1 hour of employer-paid time in a right-to-know, in a Know Your Rights training. And that could be through multiple ways, whether that's a posting similar to what is already required for minimum wage, earned sick and safe time, and wage theft. It could similarly be a requirement that the city is putting on identified and actually proven violators of the city's ordinances. As Taylor mentioned, the LSED already negotiates to have their workers trained as part of settlement agreements with employers who have violated the city's ordinance. That is something that they currently need to negotiate into those settlement agreements, and we believe should be something that is automatic as part of city ordinance. And then the third way that we envision workers being able to find out about this is by ensuring that if enough workers at a given employer are requesting a training, that the employer has to provide information so that those workers can get notice of a training. Those are the three components that we're talking about. We are talking about this in the context of what will necessarily be needed changes to the city's earned sick and safe time ordinance. Since the passage of the statewide earned sick and safe time statute in 2023 that's now been in effect for 18 months. And so there are changes that the city is going to need to do in the context of its own earned sick and safe time ordinance so that it lines up with the state ordinance. And the recommendation of the Workplace Advisory Committee is that as part of that, the city adopt a right to training. This is not a requirement on employers to provide training. This is a right of employees to receive 1 hour of paid training. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for being here today and walking us through some of those recommendations. Do any of my colleagues have any questions or comments? Okay. Council President Payne.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Thank you for this presentation. As you were outlining it, I had questions, and then you answered them very succinctly. I feel like you're presenting a very clear, actionable set of recommendations, so I just really appreciate that.
Councilmember Ellison.
Just wanted to thank you guys for the work. I also don't have an explicit question. I think the recommendations, as Council President said, are really clear. But I do want to hold up this work and not take it for granted. I think that it's, especially at a time where the city's facing budget shortfalls, and I've expressed a fear that we might go into sort of hunkering down, not investing in the kind of infrastructure that we need to support workers, not investing in the kind of innovative housing solutions that people need. These economic hard times are exactly when we need these kind of protections. It's exactly when workers need more infrastructure to make sure that they're supported. It's exactly when we need better housing options. And so I don't want to take this work for granted, and I think that you guys are presenting in front of a committee that takes these recommendations really seriously, and just want to thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you.
Agreed, and I am, just thank you so much for being here. I think was really appreciative of you all walking us through, both you, Brian and Taylor, walking us through these recommendations. I think it would be great to maybe get some of the documentation that was presented to the Workplace Advisory Committee that we can at least have access to, because I would love to dive deeper into the issues, but this is definitely something that is really important to many of our residents. I know that it particularly is important to folks that don't always know the rights that they have, people that speak different languages, many people that are struggling to make it by. When they know their rights, when they know information that they didn't have access to before, the likelihood that an employer might violate their own workers' protections or rights only gets lessened, right? So this is something that I personally do support, and looking forward to see how we can walk this through the legislative process. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, seeing no further questions, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that report. Our next item is filing a report relating to health equity initiatives. Welcome to the chambers.
Hello, can everyone hear me and see the screen?
Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Chavez and council members. My name is Pao Tal, and I am the manager overseeing the health equity team here in the health department. And today we will be presenting on the health equity related work that we've been leading in the department. And I will begin by sharing the first half of the health equity of our goals, our mission, our framework. And with me here today is my colleague, Cho Zhang, our public health specialist on the team, who will be sharing our trainings and projects that the health equity team has led in the health department.
Thanks, Pao.
Yep. And to start off a little bit about the health equity team is that we're a recently relatively new team in the health department, and we're a team of 2 full-time staff and a part-time staff. But with the goal of the health equity team is really to ensure that the health department and the city of Minneapolis is actively moving towards a healthier and more equitable Minneapolis overall, where all people have the opportunity to achieve their best possible health outcomes. And in this work, the health equity team recognizes and focuses on systems change and racial equity, where we take a holistic view of health, in which we understand that health is influenced by many factors beyond clinical, medical, and physical care, but other factors such as social, economic, environmental, and other factors that don't currently have names but people live every day, all has an impact in what we call a person's health is. And then on this slide is our ongoing framework of health equity here in the department, and was developed and created by our department's equity work group. And in this framework, it really defines our health equity approaches, in which we have 5 main principles. With the first principle being racism as a public health emergency, where this principle acknowledges that race and racism significantly influences health outcomes, and that race and racism are important facets for our work in advancing health equity forward. The second principle of health and wellness are human rights. This principle affirms that health should not be viewed as a privilege or something extra, but rather a basic and fundamental human rights. And this is our approach when we are talking about health and working towards health equity. Our third principle is trauma-informed, and this principle emphasizes the importance of understanding and addressing trauma in our work, in our staff, in the community, where we strive to deliver services in a way that is safe, respectful, but also with a healing approach. Our fourth principle is community center, and this principle highlights that our public health work must reflect the lived experiences and need of communities that we serve. And lastly, our fifth principle, data. This principle recognizes that data is an important tool in health, and that we use this tool of data for identifying and addressing health inequities in all of our work. And so these 5 principles have really guided the project and initiatives that the health equity team has led across the department that we'll be moving on to share some of them with you all. And so as we shared, racism as a public health emergency, one of our initiatives is really the connection between racial equity and public health, where we bring together and identify racial equity as a fundamental priority in our department, and where we're committed to providing staff with the learning opportunities and build understanding of how race and health are connected and influence one another to impact people's health outcomes at a systems level. And then, as part of that, we've been engaging all of our leadership team in our department, including all of our directors, managers, supervisors, through a year-long training and establishing this understanding of racial equity, where we have first started off in last year of Module 1, building a foundation of examining and understanding what does health and racial equity look like, what does psychological safety and trust feel and look like here in the department and for communities. And from there, we have since transitioned to examine how individual and institutional behaviors have reinforced inequities and identifying and naming those. Lastly, where we're currently at in the last stage of this module, working with leadership to identify those systemic changes and putting in those changes into practice in the department and in our services that we currently are delivering to communities and within our own teams. And throughout all of this, the goal of this initiative has been always to ensure that our leadership in our department has the knowledge, the skills, and the support to create a more equitable department, team, and services to improve the health outcomes of all residents in Minneapolis. And then moving on to another initiative that the health equity team has created and led in the department is the Health Literacy Initiative. And this has been a really important initiative for us, as we really stress the importance of health literacy in all of our work, and specifically whenever we talk about it, the difference between literacy and health literacy, where we define literacy as a person's ability to read, write, and understand and use information. And health literacy differs from that in terms of it's a person's ability to find, understand, and use health information and make informed decisions about their health. And that we always start our trainings of health literacy with this, because it's important to stress that a person's literacy level doesn't necessarily reflect and match their health literacy level, that we can have individuals who have high health literacy level, meaning that they can read, write, and understand English and use that information generally, but they may still experience difficulty understanding medical information and health-related decisions when it comes to health-related information. And so as a department, we strive to become an organizational health literate organization, where we recognize ourselves as public health department, and that we strive to include health literacy to make sure through our services, our programs, our staff, we're able to enable individuals to find and understand and use information to make the best health or related decision that they can. And over the past year, as part of that initiative, we've provided our staff our health literacy training. We're currently up to date. We have more than 90 of our staff completed the training and received a certificate from this training from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention. And with this training in particular, receiving high evaluation and feedback from staff that they've mentioned this training helped them grow their skills, and that this training provided them knowledge and skills to be able to apply to their daily work. Moving on to another initiative that the health equity team has led in the department is our gender inclusivity training, in which we provided two series training to the health department, where the Gender Inclusivity 101 was our first training, in which we provided staff with the foundational knowledge and for staff to learn the difference between gender, sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation, where they can have a better understanding and accurately and appropriately use these terms and ideology when speaking about their work and with community. And in this training, helping to staff to deepen their understanding and knowledge of the experiences of transgender and non-binary individuals. And as part of this, we offer a sequel to this training, the Gender Inclusivity 201 session, which built on the knowledge and lessons from this 101, but putting it and applying it to real life situations and talking about how does this look like in the workplace, in community members and their team, in terms of building a gender inclusive workspace and community. To share more about the other additional trainings and initiatives that the health equity team has led, I will now turn this over to my colleague Cho Zhang, the public health specialist on our team.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Chavez, council members. My name is Chua Zhang, and I am here with the Health Department, where I serve as a public health specialist on the health equity team. And I will be continuing our presentation by talking more about trainings and initiatives that we have developed. So with the Public Health 101 training, this is an introductory training that covers key public health concepts, core functions, and essential services. It's offered in multiple formats and is a prerequisite for our Health Equity 101 training. Here is an example of the core topics that are covered in our Public Health 101 training. And here is a direct example from our training presentation of kind of what we do when it comes to public health issues and how we respond. And this is demonstrated for the general public to understand our work a little bit more. And then additionally, we also kind of focus a little bit more on the foundational public health services. This is on the Public Health Accreditation Board website, and we highlight this because we are a accredited health department, and we do like to let our community members and our audience know that. And these are the areas and capabilities that we do focus on whenever we do work and initiatives in the department. And so Health Equity 101, this training introduces health equity concepts, emphasizing holistic health, social determinants of health, and the difference between equity and equality. This training is to help staff integrate equity into programs and planning. Here is an example from our training presentation. We wanted to highlight that although health equity may be shared around our workplace fairly often, many people do not know the meaning of health equity. And so we wanted to highlight that other agencies and organizations have their own varied definition of health equity, and then also highlighting our Minnesota Department of Health, their health equity version of their definition. Moving forward, we have our health equity webpage. This webpage highlights teams and divisions' accomplishments in advancing health equity. It also increases visibility of our efforts and supports ongoing learning by sharing our past, current, and upcoming actions and successes monthly. Here is a screenshot of how it looks like on the City Talk website. We, of course, highlight our current efforts up on top and then our past achievements below. And then moving forward, we have our health equity learning sessions. This is a series that creates a space for dialogue and learning around key health equity topics, aiming to raise awareness, identify challenges, and reduce unintentional harm that may be done to community. And it fosters cross-department collaboration and features real examples from teams across our department and enterprise. Some examples of our past topics that we have done is in collaboration with our Healthy Living team on promoting tap water to improve health outcomes. We also did a topic on safe and healthy housing for all through lead testing. This is in collaboration with our Lead and Healthy Homes team. And we also did one just yesterday focusing on waste reduction and the HARC and its impact on air quality. This is in collaboration with our solid waste and recycling division and our environmental programs team. And with these learning sessions, we have received very positive participation feedback and insights. Overall, we have a lot of people saying that they really find these sessions engaging and informational. And the ones that have attended previous sessions, they are very likely to attend future sessions that we host. And although some of these topics may be a little bit repetitive, people have noted that they do learn a little bit more of the topic the more they hear about it and learn about it. And they are grateful that we do open up this series to harder topics that are not openly talked about or learned about in the workplace. And then we do have our equity work group in the department. This work group aims to define equity, develop a shared policy and framework, design staff training, and integrate equity into contracting. We have 17 members in this work group. All are expected to join a subcommittee and attend bi-monthly equity work groups and meetings and actively contribute to equity-related planning and discussions. This is illustrated by having subcommittees focus on one goal, and these subcommittees are assigned to these top 4 goals here, which I will get into. So our first goal here is to define equity. This initiative aims to establish a shared language around equity, so all staff department can effectively engage in equity work. The equity definition is being integrated into orientation, public materials, and key department documents. A draft has been developed, and it includes historical context, an action statement, and a framework for putting equity into practice. The second goal is to create a policy and framework around equity, and this effort focuses on developing a visual framework and equity policy that guides how the health department advances equity. And the framework will be included in staff orientation and outlined in clear actions for embedding equity in our daily work. A draft has been created, which is shown in the previous slides, and with principles and measurable indicators currently in development to support progress and accountability. A third goal is to create a training plan for our staff, and this initiative aims to build a culture of equity by equipping all of our staff with the knowledge and skills to advance health equity. It includes comprehensive role-specific training supported through routine meetings and policies, and trainings are ready to launch with mock sessions planned to gather feedback and to improve content. And lastly, our goal 4 is to include equity into our contracting process, and this initiative creates a standardized equity checklist for our requests for proposals, RFPs, and educates staff and community members. It also focuses on improving accessibility, simplifying processes, and addressing equity gaps. Actions included reviewing training videos, providing feedback, and enhancing resources with our communications team and the IT department. And lastly, we have a health equity analysis tool. The goal of this tool is to make a health equity a standard across our department by increasing understanding, evaluating programs, and strengthening our accreditation. And this is kind of a snapshot of how it will look like on Smartsheet. It's still in development, and once it is in development, then we will roll it out. But so it will assess equity in our departmental works to support improvement and accountability as a way to measure all of that, and this is what the tool is for. That completes our presentation. We are here to stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pao and Chua. We appreciate you being here and giving us this presentation. I'll see if any of my colleagues have any questions. Otherwise, I did want to thank you all for this presentation. I was really excited to see all the different trainings that you all have, from the Health Equity 101 training, the Health Literacy Initiative, and specifically the gender inclusivity training that is really important in the time that we are living in right now as well. I did have a question about the health equity learning sessions. Has the health department ever considered, and maybe you do this already, but like listening sessions when it comes to this kind of work? I know that and it might be for our staff in the back of the room, but I do know that we have had some like walks in the community with the health department to talk about livability, health concerns, and I do like this component of you all working on these learning sessions, but also what would it look like for listening sessions to talk about with the communities impacted by some of the health disparities? So maybe just kind of a question or maybe just a comment.
Thank you, Chair Chavez and council members. So in parts of that, it's that, as you saw, a lot of our training has been given to our staff to make sure our staff are getting the most up-to-date, informed trainings and information to give to community. And as part of that is a piece about making sure we're hearing community and understanding what's happening, especially in the time we are in now. And a piece of that we didn't include in our presentation is that we're in partnership with a lot of our partner agencies. And one piece of that is we've been in partnership with the state Minnesota Health Department and through their Health Equity Network since their creation, where the network is in partnership with other health equity organizations, agencies, practitioners, and groups, one of which we've been a part of, where we constantly share and we meet monthly to share updates, information, resources, what we're seeing in the community, what communities are seeing, experiencing in the metro region and all over Minnesota to really get those pieces of that.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and like I said, thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful. All right, no one else is on queue, so seeing no further questions, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that update. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is receiving and filing a response to a legislative directive related to costs associated with expanding public safety related restorative services. Here to present on this item is Jared Jeffries from the Office of Community Safety, David Bernstein from the City Attorney's Office, and Director of the Neighborhood Safety Department, Amanda Harrington. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just need just a moment. Good afternoon, Chair Chavez, members of the committee. I am Deputy Community Safety Commissioner Jared Jeffries. With me today for this presentation, responding to the legislative directive on restorative programs that the city offers, are several leaders from the City Attorney's Office, Neighborhood Safety Department, and Police Department who will introduce themselves as they come up to speak. On this slide, you'll see the language from the legislative directive itself, which requested information on restorative services offered by the city, including those related to neighbor mediation for victims of crime and victims, witnesses, and/or neighbors impacted by crime, conflict, or violence. Before we dig in to the services and resources offered by the city, it's important to note where each of these services and resources lie in the greater safety ecosystem, which is not just the city, but several other entities, including the state of Minnesota, Hennepin County, and community providers who all provide several mediation services and victim witness services. Examples of these at each of those different levels include victim and witness assistance through the Hennepin County Attorney's Office, financial assistance or reparations through the Minnesota Crime Victims Reparations Board, and several community nonprofit providers that provide no or low-cost mediation or conflict resolution services. The city currently budgets approximately $5 million for restorative services, so that includes all of those general buckets that the legislative directive is really looking at. We'll first dig into the mediation services available to neighbors experiencing conflict. On this slide, you'll see several different considerations that we looked at for each of these services. First, from a policy perspective, the main considerations are really what lane the city occupies in providing these types of services. Historically, the city has not provided these services and has only recently entered this area. In considering expansion, one of the primary considerations are just the demand for the service and the types of cases where these services are effective. As this is a new area for the city, there is a lot to be analyzed from both demand and effectiveness standpoints. Other considerations include which type of disputes these services should be supplied, specifically ones where violence is involved or not involved, and that there is sometimes overlap in these cases as mediation can be ordered as a part of civil court proceedings. Moving into the specific resource that the city offers, this is, again, a very new area for the city. It's something that we're getting up and running this year. As announced late last year, MPD is partnering with the NAACP to launch a new pilot program aimed at tackling nonviolent neighbor disputes. That pilot contract is still being finalized, but is anticipated to begin in the near future once logistics and the scope are set. Next, we'll cover services for victims of violent crime or violence. Some of the policy considerations around these services include how to best continue providing support for individual healing after an incident occurs and recovery following that incident as well, and how to best ensure that we're providing these services in a timely and effective way. In thinking about expanding, the most prevalent considerations that we look at are how the city is currently using existing resources and letting quantitative and qualitative data inform refinements and further investment. One additional key consideration is how the city coordinates and provides complementary services alongside the state and county, who are the primary service providers in this area. As stated previously, there are well-known and established state and county programs that address much of the need in this area, so we want to make sure that the services provided by the city are enhancing and supplementing those and not duplicating. The city, digging into the actual contracts and resources that we've put forward for victim services who are victims of crime or violence, the city has really invested significantly in this area. It includes approximately 16 contracts. The organizations that we contract with are listed on the screen. And we approximate about 17.5 FTEs who regularly touch this work in some way. And those live within the city attorney's office, neighborhood safety, and MPD. Going back to the contracts, those external service contracts are for a variety of services, including but not limited to basic needs like food security and housing, mental and emotional health services, and victim survivor support. Within the city, those FTEs that I mentioned earlier cover the MPD community navigators, staff within neighborhood safety who administer contracts and programs, and the city attorney's office who provides support throughout the criminal complaint process for what the city handles. For more information on the services provided by the city attorney's office, I'll now hand it over to Criminal Division Deputy City Attorney David Bernstein.
Thank you. Welcome, David.
Good afternoon, Chair Chavez, members of the committee. Again, my name is David Bernstein. I'm the Deputy City Attorney of the Criminal Division of the Minneapolis City Attorney's Office. I'm going to tell you about the victim witness specialists that work in our office, and I really want to give a kudos to that group. They do outstanding work in helping victims of crime feel as comfortable and confident as they can in a very uncomfortable court process. To be clear, their role starts once a criminal case ensues in court. There's been a criminal complaint filed, a citation, a tab charge, and when the case is scheduled for court, that's when our VWSs jump in. We have 5 victim witness specialists in the city attorney's office, 2 of which are senior victim witness specialists, and they are dedicated to a domestic team and a domestic violence caseload. The other 3 are working on kind of our general trial team on a variety of different types of cases that are listed in the bottom bullet. I know you all can read, but I want to read our mission statement out loud. I think it truly emphasizes the great work that our VWSs do. Their mission statement is to uphold the rights and dignity of victims of cases prosecuted by the City Attorney's Office by providing comprehensive support, clear communication, and guidance throughout the criminal legal process. VWSs are committed to fostering a justice system that is equitable, respectful, and trauma-informed. They have a lot of communication with victims, and they really try their best to keep them informed, as well as to make sure that we are complying with our rights under the Victim Rights Statute, which I'll talk about in the next slide. I also want to emphasize the types of crimes that the VWSs are involved with. Those are cases prosecuted by the City Attorney's Office. The largest of our caseload are DWIs and domestic assault cases. But you can see from this list that there's a wide variety of types of cases that VWSs work with. And they talk with victims about things such as personal injury that they've encountered, emotional harm, property damage, or financial considerations that have been impacted by committing the offense. So the City Attorney's Office, VWS's core responsibilities are to uphold victims' rights under the Victims' Rights Statute. This is a responsibility that the City Attorney's Office has pursuant to Minnesota statutes. The Victim Rights Statute is fairly extensive. In Chapter 611A, there are multiple responsibilities that the City Attorney's Office has. Those are generalized in these bullet points. So our VWSs are responsible for providing victim notifications that a case has been filed and of court proceedings and court dates. They elicit victim input should the victim choose to provide that input, and we can then provide that input to the courts. There's trial coordination if the victim is required to testify in a court proceeding. There's referral to services. And you saw some of those services mentioned in the contracts that we have on a previous slide. We have fantastic partners in the community that are able to provide services, particularly advocacy services, that the City Attorney's Office does not provide in the course of criminal prosecution. There's restitution considerations. I mentioned financial considerations, medical bills, property damage, or the like. And our VWSs also provide trainings. They provide them to attorneys, to judges, to law enforcement, and to the community on a trauma-informed approach to speaking with victims. It's not the same as speaking to law enforcement or speaking to attorneys or speaking to judges. You need to have a soft and empathetic and compassionate voice when you're speaking with victims. And more importantly, you need to listen. And the VWSs do a great job of educating others on the importance of that. So the impact that the VWSs have, number one, the victim's participation improves outcomes. Oftentimes, we cannot be successful in our prosecution of criminal cases. We are not able to get restitution unless the victims participate. And so they help them along in that process. It also builds trust in our legal system. We try and make it as transparent as possible. We keep the victim involved to the extent that they want to be throughout the course of the proceedings and make sure they know what's happening at every step of the proceedings. And finally, we hope to promote healing, public safety, and accountability. And that's in the court system, but perhaps in the community as well through different means. So with that, I'll turn it over to Director Harrington.
Thank you, and welcome, Director Harrington.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Amanda Harrington, Director of Neighborhood Safety. I appreciate that this presentation really mimics what we're trying to do in the city, which is create that collaborative community safety ecosystem, showing that services don't live in any one of our departments. In this case, neighborhood safety is certainly involved in victim services, but we are also involved in services for bystanders, neighbors, residents who are maybe more tangentially connected to crime and violence. Related to the policy considerations, they mirror really what the Deputy Commissioner named before, but we need to ensure that we continue having services for individual healing and ensure that there are funds available for urgent victim needs. This is often less necessary with some of the bystanders and certainly something that we would need to work on as a city. Related to expansion, we don't want to expand services just for the sake of expanding them, but we want to make sure that we're using existing resources and data so that we have appropriate services in the places and for the people who need it within our city. And we also need to make sure that our community trauma services collaborate with responsive services so that when Our responsive services, whether it's fire, police, behavioral crisis response, EMS, encounter individuals, they can make that warm handoff or direct connection to these victim services that will actually support them. And then, as was noted before, we need to partner with Hennepin County, which is our social service provider in this area. The list that you saw a few slides ago for the contracts that provide victim services is really the same list that we have on this slide. I've just narrowed it down to services that aren't specifically only for people who have directly been impacted. The definition of who could utilize these services is a bit looser. And so we certainly have contracts in neighborhood safety with 7 organizations that I think fit that definition. And the services range greatly depending on what the organizations do, but some of the examples include empowerment classes on safely riding public transportation to wellness workshops for LGBTQ individuals. As the Deputy Commissioner noted before, we have people within neighborhood safety working on these contracts. They're not all program managers or contract managers. Some of them are working on negotiating contracts or processing invoices. But altogether, it's about 2.5 staff in our department. And I will send it back to the Deputy Commissioner to wrap us up.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Director Harrington and I both stated in kind of our individual comments, from a policy perspective, where we're at right now from an administration standpoint is really looking at the restorative services that we have that are getting up and running, that are relatively new, and understanding how those fit into the broader landscape that includes the county, state, and community service providers. And I think most importantly, identify efficiencies. As I think several of you know, we have obviously the Safe and Thriving Communities Report, which gives us a lot of guidance in this area, but then we also have the NYU Gaps and Assets Analysis. So we have a lot of research and analysis already done. So it's really continuing to look at those programs and the guidance from those 2 documents and really make sure that we're refining and investing accordingly. From a program perspective, again, this really looks at what can we be doing better, how are things working right now, and we continue to analyze those things, especially as those new services are coming online. And again, really tying the performance of these to our ongoing city processes, like what PMI is doing with the entire administration, with Outcomes Minneapolis, and really tying it to the greater ecosystem, as Director Harrington stated. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to stand for questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I have a few questions. I think the first one is about the mediation pilot.
Yes.
I know that based on the presentation, it's still being developed, right? So the goal is to work with the NAACP. Low-level offenses would then be referred from MPD to the NAACP, or how would that work?
Yes, that is generally how it will work, Councilmember, is that MPD would identify good cases for this nonviolent conflicts that they are tracking and be able to refer those to the NAACP.
And maybe a question for you, Deputy Chair Jeffries. Do you think that, so would folks still be required, well, would folks, in this instance, would people still file a police report and then they would get put into mediation, I guess, or is it you identify a potential crime or, maybe there's a police brutality instance and they communicated it with the police department and then the police department said, before you file this police report, you seem like a good client for this mediation pilot. We're going to direct you to have mediation with an officer. Or would this be after a police report is filed and then they could potentially go through mediation? I guess this is my question.
Chair Chavez, thank you for the question. I'll ask Assistant Chief Chris Gators to help answer that in a little more depth than I'm able to.
Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair and council members. Just real quickly, how it typically works is we have analysts who go through our record management system with all of the calls that take place, and when there are neighbor conflicts or concerns, they identify them, and then they will categorize them in, we'll say, 2 different buckets, one being violent and the other being nonviolent. So with the nonviolent ones, some of them may be torts where there isn't criminal activity necessarily. However, obviously the citizens want some type of a resolution. So those will be identified and then farmed out, if I may say, to an organization where that can assist in that pilot program, assisting with the process of getting them with a mediator and resolving the situation with the neighbors.
Okay. And maybe I'm just confusing it with, I know that I think the UCMT had a request of working through a mediation component, for example, and I'm mostly relating it to, I guess, police brutality cases, but I'm assuming this is broader than just instances of that, and this might be when it comes to like a victim of a crime then.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
Where you have, it's broad yet unique. You will have an instance where you can actually pair community members with individuals who understand more so on a cultural basis, and use their process through mediation and de-escalation and making certain that they are able to work through whatever that challenge is, but also that pairing, which is very important with individuals from same or similar community.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. And then the other component, I had questions about the funds for urgent victim needs. I think that was that you? Maybe it was.
Director
I think-
Harrington, maybe. Which slide, Councilmember, that'll help us.
Let's see.
That one.
10. Was that you, Director Harrington?
Is it this one,
Yeah,
Chair?
that one. Thank you. It's a long day. I think part of this talks about ensuring funds are available for urgent victim needs. Would this be similar to like a victims fund that other cities like do, or do you have any examples of what that would look like?
I don't, thank you
Yeah.
for the question,
Yeah.
Chair Chavez. I don't have specific examples, but we kind of had it in there because there could be something that we hadn't
Yeah.
thought of yet.
Yeah.
Generally, victim services are for people who are directly impacted,
Yeah.
and so I'm not sure how this would work with somebody that's a little bit removed from the direct victim impact,
Yeah.
but it's something for us to consider as a city.
Yeah, I'm thinking about someone experienced gun violence and they were impacted, but not necessarily injured, I assume, right? And then now they have some mental health that they need to navigate, and they don't know where to go, and how can the city help in that instance? So that's where my brain is going towards, but okay. And then the last question I had, and this might be you, Deputy Director Jeffries, is about Salem Inc. So page 7, it looks like there's a contract with Salem Inc. there. I was wondering what that contract is for, when that contract was signed, details about the contract, how much money is in the contract, given that it's on a slide.
That's actually for me, Chair Chavez. And some of those questions I can't answer, so I would love to follow back up with you on a memo, particularly related how much money is left. This contract, I believe, was signed in 2024, if not before then, but I will get all of those details and follow back up with you.
Thank you. I look forward to it. So that will be administrative follow-up. Thank you. Anybody else on cue? All right. Well, thanks so much for the presentation, y'all. Seeing no further questions or comments, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that update. Our final item is receiving and filing a quarterly update on eliminating childhood lead poisoning. Here to present that item is Alexander.
Thanks for your patience.
Oh, you're good.
Is anyone familiar with opening a flash drive? My apologies. Okay, thank you all. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your patience as I got that worked through. Chair Chavez, committee members, thanks so much for having me today. My name is Alex Vollmer. I am the manager of the Lead and Healthy Homes team in the Minneapolis Health Department, and I am here today to discuss our quarter 2 of 2025 update on the Eliminating Childhood Lead Poisoning program. So just before I begin, I just wanted to say that within the program, our team has an elevated blood lead response core programming where we receive referrals for lead-poisoned children from the state. And what we're trying to do is work within a preventative space. Those are responsive referrals, and what we're looking to do ideally is move to that preventative area where we are keeping kids from getting lead poisoned. So we want to identify, repair, and remove those legacy pollutants such as leads, using historical trends and patterns to ID high-risk properties and leverage our authority to impact change within the community. We really bake health equity, and as my colleagues Pao and Chua talked about, health literacy into our programs. 60% of our historical elevated blood leads are occurring in rental properties, so we think that's where we can really make a lot of change. In addition, those are occurring in kind of concentrated pockets within the city. So we are prioritizing our historically underserved residents and areas of the city. As I mentioned, 60% of our historical elevated blood leads are in rental properties, so that's where we are focusing. Currently, 92% of our completed or in-flight cases are in rental properties. And so we think we're doing a good job of hitting on that target. And then also just wanted to highlight the fact that the program's risk analysis for identifying buildings with that high potential for having hazardous lead-based paint also seems to be proving effective. Some of the criteria that we use for that are our historical lead poisoning metrics, such as occupancy type, building age, so really focusing on pre-1940 construction, little to no maintenance records indicating that we just don't know what's going on at the houses, and then location. And so far, with our existing portfolio, we have 83% of those rental properties that we've gotten into and have evaluated do have lead-based paint hazards. So we're pretty pleased with the effectiveness of our analytics in determining which properties we want to get into. We're trying to prevent a problem, so we don't really know what we're going to find. So we think that we're doing a good job of using the historical metrics to determine where we should be spending our time and where it's good to spend our time. It's just also important to note that rental properties have a much higher turnover than owner-occupied homes. So there's an imbalance in the number of children that are exposed to lead-based paint hazards when they are not repaired or eliminated. Just on the right-hand side here, we have a recent customer interaction that I wanted to highlight that really gets to that equity as well as literacy component. We had a customer who was proactively reached out to by the health staff due to a lower level lead exposure. The family are recent immigrants from Afghanistan and were unfamiliar with lead exposure prior to arriving in the States. During our time with the family, we were talking about lead-based paint and other consumer products and sources of exposure, and the family had brought up a recent news article that they had read about pressure cookers containing lead. So that was one thing that we were able to evaluate for them. Fortunately, the house that they were living in did not have lead-based paint in it. They were living in a newer build home, but the family did have a pressure cooker that did have leaded components on it. So, we're kind of considering that was a potential route of exposure for this child. And just at the bottom there, just a quote from the family saying that we appreciate the thorough inspection and the helpful recommendations. We'll stop using that pressure cooker right away and continue monitoring our child's blood lead levels with our health provider. Again, as my colleagues mentioned, health literacy is an important component of this work too. And within the customer experience is just bringing our staff expertise of finding and identifying lead-based paint hazards and other hazards from consumer products, our technical tools and analysis of using, quantitative data to identify the risk, as well as just our awareness of potential hazards, both in Minneapolis housing and consumer products. Again, so just our existing portfolio of properties that we're working in during this second quarter. This is current as of June 13th, so we're kind of actively updating these numbers. So what's true today or what's true yesterday may not be true tomorrow. So we currently have 102 dwelling units within our portfolio under this funding, and it's only in this funding that I'm talking about today. We have 44 of those projects currently have contracted services in flight. So what that looks like is we have a scope of work developed off of our inspections, and we have our contracted services procured. So we've put the project out for bidding. We've received those competitive bids with lead abatement firms. We've reviewed those and given our kind of go-ahead to move forward with them. And then 24 of those 44 units currently have contracts signed. So we've gone through that process that I just explained, and we've also renegotiated with the homeowner to just determine the final scope of work, as well as determine what the cost is going to be, if there's any out-of-pocket costs to the homeowners on those. So those are a little bit more towards the completion and the production phase. And then in addition to the 102 dwelling units that we have in flight right now, we have 43 additional units that were served and have been considered closed in 2025 under this program. So we have about 145 units that we have served in some capacity during 2025 with this program right here. We're continuing to focus on rental properties in those priority neighborhoods. And just a reminder on that, it's Phillips, Central, Powderhorn, Falwell, Hawthorne, and Jordan. And the reason why we're focusing on those is because those are the areas where we've had those disproportionate numbers of lead-poisoned children in previous years. So we're really trying to continue there with the limited resources that we have. Some of the ways that we are getting these properties into our portfolio, we are taking referrals for these proactive lead-based paint inspections through 311, through complaints, as well as through the Minnesota Department of Health. In the quarter, Q2, up to June 13th, we've done an additional 29 preventative inspections. And then just to kind of, again, highlight where we're getting those from, we have 10 of those referred through our partners over in regulatory services and housing inspections. We had 7 referred through 311. That could either be a complaint regarding conditions, building conditions at the home, or concerned parents who are responding to some of our social media outreach, or potentially have notes from their doctors or things like that. And then we have 2 referrals from the Minnesota Department of Health. Again, we're kind of proactively reaching out to clients who have a lower level blood lead, which indicates some exposure, and trying to kind of work with families to prevent that continued exposure. And then just in addition to all these, we do run our lead poisoning response program. We have 2 grants currently from Housing and Urban Development. We have an asthma response program where we partner with local clinics to receive referrals for children with asthma. And we also are performing weatherization with kind of a health and safety lens in some of these projects too. So we're really trying to leverage all of our programs in getting services and really comprehensive services out to our families and clients. Just wanted to highlight here some of the outcomes that have been achieved with the program. I always like to point out some of the before and after here. So we have 4 photos here that are before and after of 2 projects that we worked on. In that upper left-hand corner, you can see a 3-season porch. Those are common areas that have lead-based paint on them because it is an unconditioned surface. So that was a way to kind of keep the paint intact. Over the years, it's deteriorated. It's an easy way for children to get some exposure there, directly contacting on that surface. The lower right-hand corner is the after of that floor. So what we'll do is we'll stabilize all that paint. We'll put down an underlayment there. And this family decided to go with, or this homeowner decided to go with a vinyl flooring there. In the lower left-hand corner is an old single-hung, double-hung window, common in Minneapolis housing. All of that blue paint, the white blue paint on the sashes, the trim. There's white paint on the stops and jambs. That's all lead-based paint. It does look like somebody had tried to remove that paint and did an okay job, but there's still quite a bit there. And then in that upper right-hand corner is the after of that particular window. So what we did is we removed and replaced the sashes, the stops, and then stabilized the paint that's on the non-friction surfaces or the casing and the trim of the windows. The reason why I chose this photo actually is because one of the goals of our program is also to prevent additional exposure through improper work practices. I'm not exactly sure what happened with this one, but you can see that somebody's removing removing paint, which can actually cause additional dust and paint chips to be thrown around. So we want to make sure that we're hiring contractors that know what they're doing, that they're familiar with lead, they're familiar with lead-safe work practices, and they're really putting those practices in motion while they're helping our families. Just a quick update on some of the utilization of our funds so far, and just a reminder for where for kind of what the program has available to it. So we have up to $1 million in funds to conduct lead hazard renovations. This is in addition to the 4 staff that are managing and working on the program. We have proposed up to $10,000 per dwelling unit. So this is looking to create 100 lead-safe units with that. So it's 10,000 up to, when 100 units up to that $1 million. We're requiring a property owner match for anything that's over that $10,000. So we're actually getting, we're putting more than $1 million in services out into the community right there. And then our scope of work are designed from corrective orders to address those deteriorated lead-based paints. So if we're finding, if we're doing an inspection or evaluation at a rental property as part of a coordinated effort with regulatory services, we are writing those corrective orders, and we're basically looking to take care of everything. The funding that we have may not take care of all of that, so that's where the homeowner comes into play, either putting some sweat equity or putting some additional financial resources down to complete that project there. And really right now, the current ordinance only requires minimum maintenance, so it's maybe some paint stabilization, but as you can see from the photos from the previous slide, that may not be occurring. So we are finding hazards in those properties. And what the funding is doing is that it's actually going to, kind of do more abatement style techniques where we're getting rid of lead-based paint and we're putting permanent repairs in. Our goal is that once we go to a property, we're not coming back to a property, because we're looking at that as coming back to a property means that we are receiving a lead poisoning referral. And we're really trying to prevent that. So we really want to put those long-term fixes and repairs in and go kind of above and beyond what the minimum standard is required right now as per Minneapolis ordinance. And just a reminder, again, we have 44 projects in flight with our contracted services that are going through bidding. Currently, right now, we have a little over $300,000 in encumbered value of those contracts that we're working through. Just the last slide here as we wrap up. Just some additional priorities and emergent issues that we have observed in the last quarter. We are one of the positions in the program is the coordinator supervisor for this. That is a vacant position. We conducted interviews for that just over the last couple of weeks. So we're moving forward on that. Really looking forward to bringing that person on board so we can kind of complete and round out our staffing. Really looking to improve the efficiency and the organization for the program and staff, translating these high-level goals of preventing lead poisoning into actionable tactics, and more importantly, those direct services in the community. It's something our team does really well, is interacting with community members and getting these services out there. Using those data-driven analytics to effectively or efficiently get into the houses that we feel are the biggest priority. That's where we're looking at. If we can get into 100% of the houses we get into have lead-based paint hazards, we don't like to see that, but that demonstrates, the closer we can get to that 100%, that demonstrates the effectiveness of some of our analytics that we're using. And then just stakeholder engagement as well, improving that cross-departmental coordination between health and regulatory services, coordination with Minneapolis residents, property owners, contractors, and community organizations, really trying to get out there and promote the program. We met with our counterparts over in regulatory services a couple times during the last quarter, really trying to figure out how we can interact together and how we kind of can break down these silos. How can his and FIZ staff make referrals over to health, knowing what they're looking for, knowing what properties would be good projects for us to work on. And right now we are proactively engaging with their 2025 lead inspection, or not lead inspection, licensing inspection list, trying to kind of coordinate our services so we're going out to a property like one time. Some of the feedback that we've received from our housing inspection staff and colleagues is they're looking for some increased clarity of an authorizing ordinance to perform these lead-based paint assessments. Right now, it's kind of scattered across the ordinance that gives us that authority to be out in these properties doing this type of work. So I pulled a couple of those ordinances that are scattered between the lead poisoning response and the housing maintenance code that kind of tie together our programming. And we've met with our attorneys to discuss the feasibility of this. They think it's okay, but coming from the housing inspection staff who are working with property owners, and then also feedback from our own staff too, as they're kind of negotiating with property owners about why are you at this house, what are you doing with this information, what's the ramifications of it all. They are looking for some increased clarity there, so we might be exploring ways to enhance the ordinance as it stands right now. So this is the end of my presentation, so I just wanted to say thank you all for your time again today. It's always great to see you, and just thank you for your support, as we're moving through this and moving through some of these uncertain times where we don't really know what the future of our federal funding looks like. It's really important that we have all y'all's support in advancing this effort, so thank you.
And thank you, Alexander.
And I'm ready for questions if you have any for me.
Yes, I'll see if anybody is on queue. No? Cool. Yeah, I did maybe have one question. It looks like on slide number 6, I think for 44 projects, I think the total right now is around $302,000. So it looks like a lot of the homes are coming under $10,000, if I'm understanding that correctly. Do you know what the goal is for this year? Around how many homes? I think it's 102 or.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at $10,000 per house. That's kind of our average. Yeah. And so we're looking to get that 10,000 into 100 homes, which would bring us to that $1 million. If we're under, we're going to keep pushing for more houses, but that's kind of what our benchmarks are.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. And just keep us updated on if staff is considering changes of ordinance to help make your jobs easier to do this important work.
Definitely will. Thank you, Chair Chavez.
Yep. Council President Payne.
Thank you, Chair Chavez. Yeah, I just jumped into queue just to say thank you for doing this important work and keeping us in the loop on it.
Chair Chavez, Councilmember Payne, thanks for that. Thank you for your support as well. It's really a privilege and an honor to work with our residents in this kind of way. Housing is a unique situation because it's very private, it's very personal. You get to know people really well when you go inside their houses, but it's kind of a public good. We have a lot of people moving in and out of homes. These places have been around for 100 years, and they'll continue to stand long after its current residents are gone. So it's a privilege to serve in this kind of capacity. So thank you.
Good. Well, thank you, Alexander, to you and the Health Department for all your work.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, colleagues, I'll direct the clerk to receive and file that update. And seeing no further business before us, I will declare this meeting adjourned.